We are continuing our processing through Daf Yomi. Today's Daf is um, Yevamot Daf Kuf Zayin. And we're going to begin at the top of the Kuf Zayin because it is the beginning of the 13th chapter of Yevamot. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to, Stan, I'm going to put you on mute because I'm getting a lot of feedback from your lines. If you have any comments, feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Here we go, and let's get going. So today, again, we begin the 13th chapter of Yevamot. That's at the top of Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, and the Mishnah will begin with the discussion of miyun. As a reminder, miyun refers to the refusal by a minor girl to continue her marriage. Now, that only will work when the marriage was arranged by her mother or brothers after the passing of the father, or where the marriage that the father created terminated and now she's in a second marriage. So we'll be dealing with that actually much more tomorrow as to when miyun applies. But the Torah allows, right? The Torah, just again as further background, the Torah allows a father to marry off his daughter. And if he does so, that actually will constitute a biblical marriage that will require a get to terminate the marriage should the couple want to be divorced. And so, on the other hand, the mother and the brothers, after the father passes away, they don't have that right biblically. But the rabbis were concerned about their inability to potentially take care of their sister. We have to remember that we're talking about, extreme levels of poverty that we don't even begin to imagine in this country, but can really see around the world. Indeed, after the fall of Afghanistan, there were articles about families selling their minor daughters off. So absolutely, we can understand that could be a potential problem, that the brothers and the mother don't have enough resources, and the minor girl's not producing anything. And so as a result, they feel like they need to find somebody to take care of her, so they marry her off. And so that's what this is really about. It's protecting, ironically, protecting that girl to make sure that she has somebody who's going to take care of her if the family cannot. And so the rabbi said they can marry her off, but the termination of that marriage doesn't require a traditional get. Rather, while she's a minor, she has the ability to simply say, I don't want to be with this person. And we'll get into the details of that. I hope that what she exactly says, but the bottom line is that once is that she has the ability to reject the marriage without a get. Now, once the girl becomes an adult, well, then the fact that she is continuing in the marriage effectively confirms it. And then the marriage becomes a biblical marriage, and she will require a get for termination. So again, one other point of reminder to understand the opening Mishnah is that marriage involves two steps. There's the first step of Kiddushin, which is also referred to as Erisin, and that causes the woman to be prohibited to engage in marital relations with anyone, meaning not only is she prohibited because it's immoral, but it's actually now going to be prohibited by a higher level of prohibition, and even the husband's not allowed to have relations with her. And then Nisuin, which allows the couple to engage in marital relations. So that's the full-fledged marriage, is the step of Nisuin. So knowing that, we're now ready to jump in. And so we get to started with the top of Kuf Zayin. Beis Shammai Omrim, Ein Mima'anin Ella Arusos. That the only people who are allowed to do miyun is a minor girl who is only subject to Erisin, not Kiddushin. On the other hand, Beit Hillel Omrim Arusos Unesus. No, Beit Hillel says no. Both Arusos and Nesuas, whether you're married only through the first step of Erisin and Kiddushin, or you've even done Nisuin, you've gone to the chuppah, etc., you had marital relations potentially, so that even if you've done that, you can, the young girl can do miyun. second argument. So we're going to have a series of 5 arguments. The fourth and the fifth may be related. But the second argument is Beit Shammai Omrim Bival, that only the below Biyavam, that only the husband is allowed. The woman's only allowed to do it for a husband, but not a Yavam. And of course, Beis Hillel Omrim Bival Ubiyavam. No, both of them you can do it with. So that's dispute number 2, meaning that it even works in a marriage with Yibum. So again, let's imagine the scenario. Rivka is married to Ruvain. Ruvain dies without any children. Now she's going to marry Shimon, and so she marries Shimon. And Rivka was married to Ruvain as a minor and is remaining a minor when she's married Shimon. And now, can she engage in miyun with that second husband after doing Yibum? And the answer for Beit Hillel is yes. Beit Shammai Omrim b'fanav, that you have to, miyun has to be done in the husband's presence. Beit Hillel Omrim b'fanav b'shelo b'fanav. Nah, doesn't have to be in the husband's presence. It could be even not in his presence. Beit Shammai Omrim b'veistin. Beit Shammai says it has to be in court, and we'll see that in court here really means with formal judges who are experts. No, it doesn't need any kind of formal court. So Amru lahem Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, and Beis Hillel said to Beis Shammai, Mima'enet v'hi kitana afilu arba v'chamesh pamim. So now argument number 5 is that a minor girl can do miyun even 4 or 5 times. Now the Meiri suggests that this is why Beit Hillel doesn't think it needs to be done in Beit Din, as it would make the court subject to ridicule, as it could imply that the marriages aren't real. And Beit Shammai says back, Amrul and Beit Shammai, Ein B'not Yisrael Hefker. We don't allow our daughters to just be treated like non-owned property that anybody can take at any time. That rather she can refuse, she can do miyun, and then she waits until she's an adult, and then she refuses, and then she can marry. Now we'll offer 2 explanations for this in the Gemara at the end of today. But to simplify it, we'll offer one of the explanations that sort of fits the wording, that basically, again, she has to wait until she's an adult. She basically refuses the person. It seems like there's 2 levels of refusal: one refusal while she's a minor, a second refusal while she's an adult, and then she's allowed to marry. Okay, so that is the series of 5 different arguments. So now we're going to go through those 5 arguments and explain what the debate is all about. So the first argument, we're going to offer 4 possible explanations for the debate, and none of them, interesting, even though there will be questions on some of them, none of them will be rejected. So all 4 of the explanations are potentially potential actual explanations of this debate. So what is so we'll start with Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. In the name of Shmuel, Rav Yehuda said, my time of the Beis Shammai. What's the reasoning of Beis Shammai? Lefisha ein tanai b'nesuin. The reason that Beis Shammai says that you can only do miyun in connection with erison is because we don't allow a condition to be instituted in connection with Nisuin. And we had seen this a couple of days ago, maybe even a couple of weeks ago, that the idea is that while somebody might institute a condition for Kedushin, whereby maybe the Kedushin won't end up taking place, but once there's been Nisuin, and Rashi says this more specifically, once there's been Nisuin, even if the Kedushin was conditional, that's a tongue twister. Even if the Kedushin was conditional, the couple will forgive themselves the continuing condition, meaning they'll recognize that since they've now fully married, although now maybe the condition for the kedushin will not take place. Maybe that they said that the condition is that if I make $1 million by the time I'm 30, then my kedushin will be a good kedushin. And the person didn't make $1 million by the time they're 30, but they had gone through with the nisuin in the meantime. So by the fact that they went through the nisuin, that shows a sense of love for one another, and we're going to ignore the condition associated with the kedushin. And so the idea is that maybe when we allow for miyun, what we're saying is it's really a stipulation. It's a stipulation that says that the daughter wants to stay married to the man, that the girl wants to stay married to the man. And so since we only allow conditions for kedushin and not nisuin, so too we'll only allow miyun for kedushin and not for nisuin. The other way to understand this is it's that we might come to think that kedushin is that even nisuin we allow for conditions. That this is all a sense of condition. That on some level miyun is effectively like a kedushin. Miyun is effectively like a condition, and so as a result, if we allow miyun even for nisuin, so Beis Shammai is concerned that we'll think that we allow conditions for nisuin. So if we allow miyun for nisuin, then people will think that we allow conditions for nisuin. Now, 1 second, the Gemara asks, one second, what's the reason that we don't have nisuin for kedushin? It's because, that we don't have conditions for nisuin. Why is it that we don't have conditions for nisuin? The reason that we don't have conditions for nisuin is because we don't want people to turn. We assume that if you had nisuin, you've had marital relations, and now all of a sudden those marital relations will become like immoral marital relations. It'll be znus because you have undone the marriage. You will end up having had relations with a woman to whom you're not married, or a man to whom you're not married. So so what happens if that's the concern? Well, then why don't we allow, according to Beit Shammai, why wouldn't we allow if nichnasa l'chuppah v'lo nivela ma'ikal meimer? Why not allow miyun for the woman where they went to chuppah but they didn't yet have marital relations? Why not permit miyun in that case? So the Gemara answers, Lefisha ein tanai b'chuppah. No, even people, although of course people don't want to engage in sexual relations that is not with a spouse, they'll also don't want to make it look like they engage in chuppah with somebody who's not their spouse. So masar ha'av l'shluchei haba. Well, 1 second. What about a case where the father delivers the daughter to the husband's agents? So ma'ikal meimer. What can you say about that? Again, there also it's considered as if it's considered as if nisuin has happened, meaning that it's as if the marriage is complete at that point, even though the husband has not yet been with his wife. Once the woman has been turned over to the husband's agents, it's as if nisuin has happened. So again, that's that's an even more extreme. You haven't done chuppah, there hasn't been even chuppah yet. So in that example, and yet we say that Rabbi Beis Shammai would say because it's effectively like nisuin, we say that miyun is not possible. So the Gemara answers, lo plug Rabbanan. The rabbis did not want to distinguish among these cases. We basically said any kind of nisuin, whether it's nisuin, a traditional nisuin that involves married relations, or it's or a nisuin that doesn't yet involve married relations, or it's a nisuin that it just involves delivering the women to the husband's agents where the man hasn't even seen her, hasn't done any kind of chuppah or anything with her. We're still going to say that in all those cases, we don't want miyun to happen because we're worried that if we allow miyun in those cases, people will think that you can institute conditions to a nisuin. Beit Hillel. Why doesn't Beit Hillel have the same concern that Beit Shammai has? So they understand that they believe that everyone knows that the marriage of a minor girl in this situation where the father has died and the mother and brothers are marrying her off, that it is only a rabbinic marriage, and so people will understand that even though this marriage is dissolved through miyun, it does not involve a stipulation, and you cannot engage in stipulations for nisuin. So that's explanation number one, according to Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. And now we turn to explanation number two. Explanation number two is offered by Rabbi and Rav Yosef. The Amri Tarvaya, the two of them both say, time of debate Shammai, lefisha ain adam osa beila so beilas nus. Again, a person does not want their marital relations to engage, to become znus, to become promiscuous. They don't want people to think that. And so as a result, that's why we don't want to allow miyun after nisuin. So 1 second, but then those same two questions that we asked earlier would apply here as well. What about the case where she did chuppah, but she hasn't yet had marital relations? Why should Beit Shammai prevent miyun in that case? Again, again, we don't want a chuppah for a forbidden thing, meaning that, again, similar to our first answer, we don't want a man won't want to engage in chuppah where it will end up being that his chuppah was with somebody that he's not in fact married to. So Masar ha'avla shluchei about, what about when the father delivers the daughter to the husband's agents? Why in that case wouldn't we allow Beit Shammai to do why wouldn't Beit Shammai allow the girl to do miyun in that case? Again, she hasn't engaged in marital relations. She hasn't even engaged in chuppah. So what's the reason to restrict that? So again, lo plug rabbanan. The rabbis are not going to distinguish. Once we have a concept where there's a full-fledged marriage, and so both erusin and nisuin have taken place, well, then the rabbis aren't going to allow miyun, even if they haven't engaged in marital relations or even had a chuppah. Beit Hillel. What about Beit Hillel? Why do they allow miyun in all these cases? Well, kaven de ika kedushin ksuva. Look, there is formal kedushin and a ksuva. The lo asul lamemer de beila so beilas nus. So as a result, people are not going to say that this was a promiscuous cohabitation, because they are going to know that in fact this couple was married, but then the girl did miyun, and so as a result, that is going to enable that is going to give comfort to the husband, so he knows that no people are not going to speak badly about him, saying that he was married to this girl in an improper fashion. So Rav Papa, so that's explanation number two. And now we continue with explanation number three. Rav Papa Amar, time of debate Shammai Mishum Pere. No, the concern is that Beit Shammai is worried about the incentives for the husband. And specifically, it's the incentives associated with the property that belongs to the wife and the fruit that the husband's allowed to get. So again, Mishum Peri means because of the fruit. And what are we talking about? We're talking about the woman's property. She brings certain property into the marriage. And that property is depending on its nature. We're talking here about nichse malug as opposed to nichse tzon barzel, where the nichse malug is property that she brings in and she keeps all the principal, but the profits that are associated with it go to the husband while they're married. So what are we concerned about? So we're concerned, according to Beit Shammai, and again, time of the Beis Hillel Mishum Peri. Not only is Beit Shammai worried about it, but Beis Hillel is worried about it. But they think about it in the exact opposite directions. And how does it work out? Time of the Beit Shammai Mishum Peri. When Beit Shammai is worried about the fruit, it's because the Amrit Nesua Tamayin. Because if you were to allow the husband, allow the girl to do refusal and to do miyun, which means refusal. If she were allowed to do that when they were fully married, so shamit va'achuluhu mina. so then the husband is going to not manage the asset well and not worry about it, because he's always worried that the girl is going to do miyun with him, because the sof lamepa kaima, because at the end of the day she's going to potentially leave him. So as a result, it's the following: the Beis Shammai says, look, the husband says effectively to himself, this girl whom I'm married to, so I have access to her field, so I'm going to make sure to do as much and get as much fruit out of this field as I possibly can, because maybe she'll do miyun and she'll leave me. And so as a result, that's why I'm not going to treat her field nicely. And so as a result, we say no miyun after marriage. And so that way the husband knows she can't do miyun any longer. And so as a result, he'll be sure to treat the field properly and take care of it and manage it well. On the other, because he wants to make sure that he gets as much fruit out of it over the course of her life. Now, on the other hand, Ubeit Hillel, he says, Adarabba, exactly the opposite. Kaven de Amra Tima and Ashbuche Mishbach Lahu. No, the ability to terminate will ensure that he has the proper incentives to take care of the field. Because what is he going to think? De'ilo, if he doesn't take care of it, Aitzila Kroveha Umatgila Mine, that her brothers are going to, and relatives are going to tell her that she should reject the husband and give her advice to reject the husband and thereby take her away from him. And so of course he wants to remain married to her. So his incentives are to manage the field well. So very interesting how you can see the same facts, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and I sort of view this as a glass half full or half empty kind of thing. And one side says, no, this in fact creates incentives for waste, and the other side says, no, it creates incentives for taking good care. So that's explanation number 3. So what's explanation number 4? And I welcome, by the way, maybe at the end, if you have your own thoughts about which one of these two approaches you think makes the most sense, I welcome to hear it. Rava Amar, so Rava offers the 4th and final approach. Hainu time of the Beis Shammai. No, this is the reason of Beis Shammai. She'ein Adam Torech B'Seuda Umasida. Now, he doesn't want to make a big wedding party and then it all goes to waste because she rejects him. So as a result, because we want to encourage husbands to have nice wedding parties for their wife, so as a result, Beis Shammai says, no, we're not going to allow miyun after Nisuin. We're going to say miyun has to be only after Erisin, but after Nisuin, then we won't allow it to happen because we're worried that the man won't give his wife a nice party. On the other hand, Beit Hillel says, no, Tarvayu Nichalahu Kedei Delepuk Elihu Kala Deishas. No, they're going to throw a nice party because the husband and the wife want the community to know that they're in fact married. And so as a result, we can allow miyun even after Nisuin. So, all right, so now we've explained 4 different reasons why Beit Shammai says that miyun only can happen after Kedushin / Erisin and not after Nisuin, while Beit Hillel says, no, even after Nisuin, it can happen. So now we go to the second argument, and it was the Beit Shammai Omrim Bival. Beit Shammai said it only applies to a husband and not to a yavam, where Beis Hillel says, no, it applies both to a husband and a yavam. So let's take a look and see what we're going to offer 2 understandings of what's going on. Meaning how far, when Beis Hillel says miyun applies to a yavam, how far do we take that? So Rabbi Yoshia, mam'enet l'ma'amaro, ve'ein mam'enet l'zikaso. Now, when can she do her refusal, her miyun? She can do refusal with respect to ma'amar, meaning that if in fact, so again, Reuven was married to Rivka, and Reuven dies without children. And now Rivka is going, again, Rivka is the minor, and Rivka is going to do, and now Shmuel, Shlomo, excuse me, uh, 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 what was the name? Shimon is going to do Yibum with Rivka, and Shimon now, and as the first step, as we've seen earlier in Maseches Yevamos, the first step that he does with her before actually taking her in marriage is Ma'amar, and so he does Ma'amar with her, and so Reb and so Rabbi Yoshia says that it is that ma'amar that can be undone by miyun, but the zika relationship cannot be undone by miyun. So presumably there would still need to be chalitza. So they wouldn't be, if she does miyun and rejects Shimon, well then they're not allowed to marry, but she is not yet free to marry anyone she wants because there remains a zika relationship. And so to undo the zika relationship, we would need chalitza. Amar Rav Chisda says, wants to understand Rav Oshia's opinion. My time with the Rabbi Oshia, what's the reasoning of Rav Oshia? So Mamar de Medata Matzia Akra, that maybe, Mamar, requires her consent because he says to her, I want to marry you, and she has to affirm and agree. That's the nature of Mamar. Zika, Debal Karcha, Lo Masya Akra. So maybe that's the reasoning that of Rav Oshia, that he says Mamar requires her consent. So as a result, she can uproot it with Mamar, with Miyun. Whereas Zika does not require her consent, so she can't uproot it with Miyun. But 1 second, the Gemara, that can't be the explanation because V'harei bia deval karcha, because we have when we've mentioned this previously with respect to Yibum, that Yibum, meaning marital relations against her will by the Yavam, by Shimon with Rivka. If Shimon takes Rivka, even though she was not intending their marital relationship to be for marriage, but he was intending it to be for their marriage, they will be married through Yibum, because Yibum does not require her willing participation. And so we now turn to Kuf Zayin of a bet. And yet, Umatzia Akra, and yet, even though she could be taken against her will in Yibum, we allow Miyun, according to Beit Hillel, to uproot that Yavam relationship. So why shouldn't Zika be any different? Meaning Zika is also against her will, so let her use Miyun to uproot it. Ella, the reason is, via umamar dehu ka'avid matya akra. Now, where he has to do something, that's where she can uproot it. Meaning, when it comes to mamar, the man has to say something to her that I want to take you as my yivama and to be my wife. And also when he engages in marital relations with her in order for her to be his wife. Both of those require his action. So in that situation, that's where she can do miyun. But Zika de Rahmana Rama Allah lo matzi akra. But when it comes to Zika, so according to Rav Oshia, she cannot uproot it with miyun because Zika is something that God created. It's a special relationship that God creates between a widow and the brothers of her deceased husband when the deceased husband has no children. So Ula, however, offers a different understanding, and he would say the following: Ula Amar Mamenet Avuzika. So no, Miyun could even work with respect to a Zika and eliminate the need for Chalitza. So my time, what's the reason? Why is it that it works? Because Nesui Kamai Ka'akra. Because what she's really doing when she's saying that she doesn't want to marry one of the brothers in connection with Yibum, that what she's really saying is, I want to uproot my entire original marriage. So now we're going to challenge Ula's position, because Ula was challenged by Rava. because what do we have in the first Mishnah of our Masechet Yevamos? We had a discussion about miyun, and what did we say? Kol sheyachol l'ma'in v'lo me'ana. That if you have an erva relationship, again, one of the 15 kinds of relationships that we talked about in the very first Mishnah of our Masechet, we'll simplify the situation and just say that we're talking about let's say the man's own daughter is now falling to her. The man's daughter married his brother, and so now the brother dies without children, and now she well, that's actually not a great case, but in any event, so the man's, we'll say the man's half sister comes to him without from his mother, comes to him as a result, and so now she, because of that, not only is she not allowed to engage in Yibum with her because that's an erva, but we said that all of the co-wives don't engage. So let's take a look and remind ourselves what we said. So if you have a minor child who has the possibility of doing miyun but has not yet done so, the man has to do, Shimon has to do chalitza with the co-wives. Now he doesn't have to do chalitza with her because she is his erva, and as a result of that relationship, there's no possibility of yibum. But because she still has the theoretical possibility of nullifying the original marriage, so as a result, we have to do chalitza. But Amai, why do we require chalitza? Tima'ain hashta v'ta'akrinun linisui kamai. Let her uproot her first relationship, the marriage to her first husband, and now the remaining co-wives will no longer be co-wives of an erva, and v'hisyabim sarasa, and now her co-wives can be taken in yibum. So doesn't the fact that we don't say that mean that Ula is wrong? Because after all, Ula said that when she does miyun, she undermines her original marriage. So no, it does not in fact disprove Ula, because tsaras erva shiny, the co-wife of an erva, could be different, namely that the death of the husband could trigger a different ruling. And we're going to now see, because we have a brisa that says the following: the Tani Rami Bar Yechezkel, Meyana B'Baal, that where you have a young girl who is is going to refuse her husband, who's going to do miyun to her husband because she was married off by her brothers and mother, and not by her father who had passed away. Muteris Laviv, so she's allowed to marry the father of her original husband, because the relationship, by doing miyun, the first husband, it's as if the husband didn't even exist, and so as a result, she's not prohibited to marry that man's relatives, namely her father or her son, okay, or his son, excuse me, his father or his son. So, but biyavam, if in fact the first husband passes away, and now she does miyun, well then asura la'aviv, then she will be forbidden to marry his father. So alma b'shas nefilas niris kechala. So the reason is because when her husband died, her first husband died while she was a minor, and even though she could have done miyun before he died, but she had not, because he had already died. So it looks to the entire world like she is his real daughter-in-law. So Hachanami, here too, it looks like these sarot, these co-wives, are her real co-wives. B'shas nefilas nearest kitzaras bito. So too, it looks like that she's that these co-wives are the co-wives of his daughter's co-wife. So as a result, the point is that we're not going to allow even though miyun uproots the entire original marriage, it won't actually permit yibum with the co-wives. And so as a result, Ula's ruling is not rejected by our original Mishnah in the first parak of the of Maseches Yevamos. So now that we've confirmed that works, so now we're going to offer three different opinions regarding doing miyun to one brother, and whether or not it affects marrying another brother. So here we're going to use the example of, again, Reuven is married to Rivka. Rivka was the minor that was married to him, married off to Reuven by her brothers and mother, not by her father. So she's able to do miyun. And now Reuven dies, leaving Shimon and Levi. Shimon and Levi are now left. And let's say that Rivka does miyun with Shimon. What is the status of her ability to marry Shimon? And what is the status of her ability to marry Levi? Well, not surprisingly, it's going to be a three-way machlokus that effectively provides for almost all possibilities. So let's take a look and we'll see inside the three different possibilities. So meyana b'zeh asur l'zeh. Rav says that if she does miyun with Shimon, she's not even allowed to marry Levi. Now, again, why would you think that she could marry Levi? Well, you think that she could marry Levi because what does the miyun do? The miyun uproots not only, again, this is all according to Ula, it uproots her original marriage to Reuven. So if she was never related to Reuven, well, then that means that she can marry Reuven's brothers. Now, maybe because she did miyun with Shimon, we won't allow her to marry Shimon, but why shouldn't she be allowed to marry Levi? So Rav says she can't even marry Levi because midida have abalas haget. Because her doing miyun is like Shimon giving her a get. And in the case of, we saw this earlier in Maseches Yevamos, that even though the actual way to free a Yevamot is through chalitza, if a get is given instead by any of the brothers, all of the brothers are prohibited to do yibum. It's not just, doesn't just prohibit the brother who gave the get. All the brothers are prohibited to do yibum. And so balas haget lav kevent is tasra la lechad itasra la lechulu. That when it comes to a get, once she's prohibited to one brother, she's prohibited to all the brothers. So hachinami loshna. So we're not going to treat this case as any different. Miyun is the substitute for get, according to Rav. And so since a get would prohibit her to marry both Shimon and Levi, we're going to say that she can't marry either Shimon or Levi. Shmuel Omer. Shmuel offers a second opinion, and that is meyana b'zeh muteres l'zeh. No, if she does miyun to Shimon, she can still marry Levi. V'lo dami l'balas haget, and it's not comparable to getting a get because balas haget hu of it. Because when it's balas haget hu of it, when it comes to a get, he's the one who is active. She didn't do anything, but hacha he kavdabe. But here it's she who's doing the action. De amra lo ra'ena bach lo tzavena bach. She is saying, I don't want you and I don't desire you. So this is the language that we're going to see is the clear seems to be the language of miyun. So bachu de lo ra'ena. When she's saying that, the implication is I don't want you. But I can take your fellow, namely your other brother. I'll take him. So as a result, Shmuel says she can't marry, that Rivka can't marry Shimon, to whom she does miyun, but she could marry Levi. Rav Asi offers the third possibility, and he says, Rav Asi Amar miyana bazeh muteres afilu lo. No, she can even marry the brother to whom she refused, because what does her miyun do? Her miyun uproots her relationship with Reuven. And so now she's not it's as if she was never married to Reuven. And so as a result, since she was never married to Reuven, she's allowed to marry any of his brothers. And so as a result, that works perfectly. So there you have it. So now we've seen all three possibilities. So lema karabi oshia svirule. Now, maybe we should say, so now that we've given those three possibilities, can we say that Rav Asi holds like Rav Oshia? Now remember, Rav Oshia says that miyun works only on Ma'amar, not on Zika, meaning that even if you do Ma'amar, you are not prohibited to marry. You mean you still have a relationship with the brothers. So maybe we can say that the reason that Rav Asi allows her to marry any of the brothers is because miyun doesn't uproot that Zika relationship. So no, that is not what we're going to say. No, b'chad yavam hachinami dematzi akra. No, Rav Asi would say that with one yavam, she could in fact uproot the Zika relationship. Hacha b'shnei yavamim askinan de'ein miyun l'chatzi Zika. That when it comes to miyun, Rav Asi would say that within the opinion of Rav Oshia, that in fact miyun could only work to perform chalitza when there's only one brother, when it's just Shimon. Then when she does miyun to Shimon, so it rejects the entire relationship. But here where she does miyun just to Shimon, but Levi also exists, it does not uproot the Zika relationship, and she has the ability to marry either of them. So, okay, so that's the explanation of how even Rav Asi could be like Rav Oshia. Kiyasa Rabban Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Now, when Rabban came from Eretz Yisrael, we're going to have another story, and we're going to see who Rabbi Yochanan is like and who Rabbi Yochanan is not like. So what did Rabban say when he came? He said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, miyan bezeh muteres la'achen, that when she does miyan to one brother, she's allowed to marry the other brothers. Now, again, that is clearly Shmuel. Shmuel specifically says that when she does miyun to Shimon, she can still marry Levi. But v'lo hodulo, they did not agree with him. So who is this man lo hodulo? Who is it that didn't agree with Rabbi Yochanan? So let's take a look and see. So Amar Abaye Rav. Abaye says it was Rav who doesn't agree with Rabbi Yochanan, and of course that makes sense because Rav says that not only can she not marry the brother to whom she does miyun, she can't marry any of the other brothers either. So that's true. Rava Amar Rabbi Oshia. No, Rava says it was Rabbi Oshia who said that. And why would Rabbi Oshia prevent it? Again, Rabbi Oshia would say because Rabbi Oshia would be inconsistent with what we just said because Rabbi Yochanan allowed miyun to work on the Zika because it allowed her to marry any of the brothers. So that shows that the Zika is now broken. Okay, so that shows that Rav Oshia is also differs from Rabbi Yochanan. And finally, the Amri la Rav Asi, and some people say it was Rav Asi. Now, the reason that who was it that differed with Rabbi Yochanan? It was Rav Asi because Rav Asi says that not only can she marry the other brothers, she could even marry the brother to whom she did miyun with, and that was different from Rabbi Yochanan because Rabbi Yochanan said she is only permitted to marry the other brothers. Okay, so that is the end of our discussion of the second machlokas about whether or not miyun works with a yavam. That we focused only on Beit Hillel's opinion. Beit Hillel said that miyun even works in the case of yibum, and so and we've shown that there's a debate as to the extent to which debate among the Amoraim about the extent to which miyun can work in the case of yibum. Does it actually effectively uproot the entire relationship and thereby avoid a need for chalitza, or does it only uproot the marriage and does not actually uproot the Zika itself? Okay, so that was machlokas number 2. So now we turn to machlokas number 3, where Beit Shammai said miyun requires the presence of the husband, and Beit Hillel says it does not. Well, now Beit Hillel is going to challenge Beit Shammai over a specific instance. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Amr lahin Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel said to Beis Shammai. One second, what about the following story? V'halo Pishon Hagamal. When we came to Pishon, the guy who rode camels, Miyana Ishto Shalo B'fanav. We allowed his wife, to do miyun outside his presence. Amrullah and Beit Shammai Beit Hillel. Beit Shammai said that was a special case. Pishon Hagamal b'mida kefusha madad, that he had reversed the measurements. Now, what does it mean that he reversed the measurements? So we're going to see that the Gemara is going to explain it in a moment, that it means that he was taking advantage of his wife's property. Lefichach madadulo b'mida kefusha. So as a result, they reversed the measurements for him, meaning that what Beis Shammai is saying now is that because even though ordinarily Beis Shammai says that you have to have the husband present in order to do miyun, if the husband is a bad guy and is doing something wrong, so then maybe we'll allow her to do miyun outside his presence. So therefore, it seems as if miyun in the presence of the husband is only lechatchila according to Beit Shammai, but b'diavad, if in fact she had done it, maybe it would even be okay. And specifically, if the guy was a bad guy, we'll maybe even let her do it lechatchila. So 1 second. One second. The only time that a husband has access to his wife's property in order to potentially waste it is after Nisuin. But we said Beis Shammai tells us that only somebody subject to kedushin / erisin is able to do miyun. Once you do nisuin, you can't do miyun. So trey kitrei abdube. Nah, you're absolutely right. But that's what Beit Shammai says. But Beit Shammai will allow us to reverse the rules and even allow miyun even allow miyun after nisuin, after the full-fledged marriage, if the husband is mistreating his wife. And so as a result, what we see here is that the rulings that Beit Shammai offers, at least two of the rulings that Beit Shammai offers in our Mishnah, appear to be only lichatchila. That only lichatchila do we say that you can't do miyun before, you can't do miyun after nisuin. But b'diavad, after the case, if in fact she's not treating him well, he's not treating her well, then in fact we will allow her to do miyun even after they get married. Okay, so that is the discussion about dispute number 3. And again, obviously we hold and we don't engage in miyun today because we don't have, we aren't really allowing brothers and a mother to marry off their daughter. But if in fact they had done so then we would, then we would allow miyun and we would allow miyun even after nisuin. It doesn't make a difference because that's the position that Beit Hillel offers. That it doesn't make a difference whether it's before or after nisuin. At all times, the minor girl is able to reject her husband. And similarly, we would allow that rejection to happen even if the husband was not present. Okay, so now we get to the 4th dispute, and this is the dispute about whether or not we need a court. So Beit Shammai says, no, you need a court. Beis Hillel says no. So Beit Shammai, Omru Fnei Beis Din, it needs to be in front of the court. And Tanan Hassam, we have a Mishnah at the beginning of Maseches Sanhedrin that says the following: Hachalitza v'hameyunin b'shlosha. That when it comes to chalitza and miyun, you need 3 judges. So doesn't that show that in fact, that this must be Beit Shammai, right? So Mantana, who is it that taught this? So Amar Rabba says, Beit Shammai, it's got to be Beit Shammai. After all, Beit Shammai is the one who says that you need a court for miyun. So Amar Abaye says, no, it does not in fact show that, because Afilu Tema Beis Hillel, you can even say that it's Beit Hillel. Ad kan lo ka'amri Beit Hillel el de lo be'inan mumchin. That Beit Hillel says when he says that you don't need a court, he's just saying you don't need expert judges. Aval shlosha be'inan, but you need to have at least three men present to serve as an informal judicial body. Kedetanya, as we learned in a brisa, Beis Shammai Omer b'fnei Beis Din. Beis Shammai says that you need a Beis Din. Beis Hill Omer b'fnei Beis Din v'shelo b'fnei Beis Din. Beis Hill says that you can have it whether in court or out of court. But they both agree that you need to do it in front of three men. So Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, Rabbi Lazar bar Rabbi Shimon, Machshir and Bishnayim. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Lazar say that even two are sufficient. So Amar Rav Yosef bar Menume, Amar Rav Nachman halacha ka'osazug, and the halacha is, according to Rav Yosef, like that pair. Now I will note that there are some who have a different language here and suggest that the language is that ain halacha. But in any event, the point, which of course makes a very big difference. But the bottom line is that we do in fact require, we generally do, when it comes to chalitza, we certainly try and do three. In fact, we try to do five at least. In fact, we, so that's with respect to chalitza. But with miyun really isn't done today, so we don't really have opportunity to see what that would be like. But presumably, we would certainly we would do it in front of a three-judge panel in any event. So that's the fourth of the five debates. And now we go to the final debate, and with that, we'll conclude for the day. And that is Beit Shammai Omrim Timayin. Beit Shammai says that she does miyun, and then she waits until she's an adult, and she does a miyun again, and then she can marry. Well, 1 second. She already did miyun when she was a minor. Why does she need to repeat it? So we're going to offer two possible answers. Answer number one, Amar Shmuel, Ad Shetagdil L'Tomer Ratza Ani B'Me'unim Harishonim. That what she's saying is we need to wait until she becomes an adult and says that she wants to confirm her first miyun. So it's not a second miyun, but rather just a statement of confirmation. And when she confirms, well, then she's allowed to go and marry whomever she wants as an adult. Ula Amar, no, Tarti Katani. We're misreading our Mishnah. And really, it is talking about two separate situations. One possibility is she does miyun, and then she can wait until she's an adult, and then she can go through the entire ordinary betrothal process on its own, meaning that the next step is she does erusin and then nisuin, meaning she will then first become betrothed and then she'll become fully married. Or if she chooses and wants to get married while she's still a minor, well, then not only does she need to, she no longer goes through the erusin period, that she goes straight into nisuin. And so as a result, that is what Beit Shammai is saying, because Beit Shammai does not want to allow miyun to happen two times. And so the way that he prevents it is by either requiring her to be an adult when she next marries, or requiring that the next marriage be a jump straight into nisuin. And as we saw, Beit Shammai says that the woman is unable to do miyun in a situation of nisuin, except in extraordinary cases like the fellow Pishon, who was the camel driver who really mistreated his wife. So that is the explanation. Now, Bishlama Ula, it makes sense according to Ula, the reading, how we're reading our Mishnah, because Hainu Diktani Ad Shetagdil Tamayin V'Tinase, that when we say until she reaches adulthood and then she or she refuses and becomes fully married, meaning that those are the two cases. She has to wait until she's an adult, or she can refuse and become fully married immediately. So that we can fit all those words into our Mishnah. Shmuel, but according to Shmuel, why do we talk about Tima'en when she becomes an adult? It shouldn't say Tima'en, it should say Tomer, meaning she's not actually rejecting the guy again. She's not doing a second miyun. She's just stating the fact that her first miyun was a valid miyun and she wants to stick by it. So Kasha, in fact, that is a difficulty. And so tomorrow, stay tuned as we pick up with the next Mishnah, and the next Mishnah will tell us who can and cannot do miyun. And so we'll get, even though we sort of went through that in the beginning to introduce it, now we'll get the details going tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a good day, all.
Okay, be well.
Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.